I have some tips for anybody dealing with hanging idle on their motorcycle. If you don't know what that is, it's when you rev the bike and the engine RPM doesn't return to idle quickly, or it doesn't return to idle at all, and it just stays elevated, 2500 or higher RPM. And in my reading on the subject, it starts out with the easiest possible solutions first. So ideally the carburetors need to be synced. So if we're talking bench syncing the carburetors, what you do is you have carburetors, and one of them will be your baseline carburetor that is non-adjustable. So this one here, the third carburetor, 1, 2, 3, is non-adjustable, while the other 3 carburetors are, and they would have a screw and a nut. So you loosen the screw, you turn the nut, and it'll adjust the slide height. And it doesn't take much movement to get a change in that height. So you got to be very meticulous in that. Once those are all set, and when you're doing that, you're sticking a little wire in there, and that wire should have the same drag in each of these openings as you're doing that. So I had done it several times. I was confident that it was as close as it could be for a bench sync. So then what the possible solutions are after that is a vacuum leak. And with a vacuum leak, air is being sucked into the engine and leaning out the carburation. And with intake boots, with the bike running, you can spray starting fluid around each of these boots, and if you get a change in idle, then you're sucking air somewhere around it. So either these boots have gotten old and hard and are cracked and are sucking air, or it's not sealed against the head of the engine very well. So what I try doing is I put some high temp silicone on here and reinstall them, and that didn't fix my problem. The next possible solution is issues with the springs on your mechanical advancer. And what happens is this mechanical advancer is attached to the crankshaft, and as it spins, centrifugal force flares these weights out and advances your timing. So if these springs are old and weak, they kind of flop around and they don't hold enough tension on here. So if you don't, the most cost-effective way to address that is to do like what I try doing, and I just clamped the spring in some little vice grips like this. I heated it up with a torch, and then I just let it cool. And once you do that, the spring is hardened and it'll be a nice tight fit. It's not going to be a factory setting, but it will correct the problem if you don't want to wait, or if you just don't want to spend the money on getting new springs, and they can be kind of difficult to find anyway. None of these solutions fixed my problem. Oh, also, slow speed jetting or pilot jets are another solution. But that didn't work for me either. All it was doing was just making the bike run worse, and it was fouling out my plugs. So, I mean, you've got carb synchronization, you've got pilot jet settings, you've got air leaking around your intake boots, you've got springs on your mechanical advancer. None of that was fixing it for me, and that was pretty much where the suggestions for fixing the problem ended. It ruined my whole riding season, where the bike just, it would run good off idle, but at idle it just would not come back down to a reasonable level. It would idle at around 2500 RPMs. It made it difficult to shift. The bike ran hot because it just wouldn't slow the RPM. So what I ended up doing to fix it, what I did to fix it is I vacuum synced the carburetors, and that fixed it. The reason I held off on doing that and didn't try that earlier is that the bike just wasn't idling right, and I figured that it needed to idle correctly before you would vacuum sync the carburetors. Not true. So once I vacuum synced these carburetors, all the problems were gone and it ran beautifully, and it was at the very end of the season, and you know, I fixed it, but I was out of riding time, so I still haven't done any of the fine tuning. If you are going to vacuum sync these, you don't need boots that have the ports on them. You can just pull these boots off right here, and you connect your hose at this point and do your vacuum sync. But I just thought I'd throw that out there because all the information that I was looking into, or suggestions for solutions, were all these other areas, and nobody said to vacuum sync the carburetors to address hanging idle, but that's exactly what fixed it for me. So just a little tip, hopefully it helps somebody. I wish I would have found that information, so that's why I made this video. So all right.